today we'll not be bringing you your regular news desk. This morning, the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in partnership with JoyBusiness and the Ghana Shippers Authority, is holding a virtual sensitization seminar on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, AFTA. The overall objective of AFTA is to create a single continental market for goods and services with free movement of business persons and investments. It's also to pave way for the acceleration of economic growth. The 2-hour virtual event, which will be live here on JoyNews, on Joy FM and myjoyonline.com, aims at getting Ghanaian private sector businesses to leverage the free trade area by adopting the right business strategies. I'm Bernice Abubedulansa, but let's cross over now to the Ghana Shippers Authority at Ridge, where my colleague and moderator of the program, Odilia Ntiamo, is standing by to start the conversation.
Welcome to today's sensitization program that has been put together by the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, together with the JoyBusiness team, the Ghana Shippers Authority, and Bank of Africa. Now, a bit of context, because the context is important. In 2017, UNCTAD put some figures out saying that Africa's intra-trade stands at some 16.6%. Well, fast forward, we have the continental free trade now to actually breach the gap. The question is, how prepared are our entrepreneurs and, of course, our businesses right here in Ghana to take advantage? The Afro Champions released the Year Zero report to say that Ghana was standing at some 5th position, or the 5th position, when it comes to our readiness or relating to implementation. But when it comes to the structures, education, and all that, it looks like we have some shortcomings and may not be finding ourselves in top 10. So it's important that we give some level of education, and that's why these organizations put themselves together to do this. I'd quickly say that before we start off the program, let's quickly do an opening prayer, and we'll call upon Mrs. Victoria Haja, who's the Vice President of GNCCI, to come and do that.
Good morning. Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you this morning for your goodness, for your mercy, for sustaining the breath in our nostrils in these difficult times and gathering us here today. The purpose, O Lord, is that we are to receive information so that we will be able to apply it relevantly to our businesses and be ready for this great opportunity that you have presented us with. So we are grateful that you have gathered here such esteemed personalities whom you have gifted with knowledge, O God, in this area of business. And we are asking that you would be with us and enable us to have a meeting that will propel us, our businesses, and this nation forward. So we'll take advantage of that which is within this AFTA. We ask all of these things through our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I'd quickly like to do an introduction, and I will just do the introduction according to the program lineup. So we will have some remarks coming from Mr. Clement Osei Amwako. He's the President, GNCCI.
Good morning. Honorable Alan Chemantin, Minister of Trade Designate, who is represented by Dr. John Asiedu. Honorable Sherry Ayokobochi, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, also being represented by Bonaventure Ajavo, Director of Trade, Investment, Economic Trade, and Investment Promotion, who's also a friend. His Excellency Wankari Mende, who for other reasons had to fly away from Ghana for another important, equally important meeting. Ms. Benonita Bismarck, the CEO of Ghana Shippers Authority, my sister, and the council members of GNCCI. Mr. Kobianda, MD, CEO, Bank of Africa, Ghana Limited, who is also our sponsor. Mr. David Ofosudote, Senior Partner, AB and David. Mr. Ernest Bediako Sampson, CEO, NS Chemist Limited. Mr. Anthony Nyamiba-Afi, Minister of Trade and Industry. Mr. Gerard Nyakume, a consultant on export, who is also here with us. Mr. Feshin Akoto, General Custom Division. Distinguished CEOs, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and media. Good business day. It is my singular honor to welcome you to this important virtual sensitization seminar on the African Continental Free Trade, that is AfTA, under the theme AfTA, adopting the right business strategy to fully benefit. It's sponsored from the Bank of Africa Ghana Limited. On behalf of the private sector of Ghana, the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry cordially expresses its appreciation to the Secretary General of AfTA, His Excellency Wankari Mende, for gracing this occasion as we were expected, but then he gave us his word. We acknowledge the respective roles of our partners, our partner ministries in the operationalization of the AfTA towards strengthening Africa's position within the international trade system. On this note, let me extend our warmest congratulations to Dr. Ngozi Nkoja-Iweala for her appointment to the Director General of the World Trade Organization, WTO. This is a very significant moment for Africa, and we are happy for that. And particularly at this time that we are operationalizing the AfTA, a lot would have to come from her. Let me acknowledge the collaborative support from the Ghana Shippers Authority, who always have been with us and been very supportive enough. I cannot do it by not also saying thank you to JoyBusiness, who have done a lot of work in terms of adverts and other things to let people know what we are doing today. The Business 24 Limited, the Ghana Web, is also organizing this virtual seminar. Finally, I commend our distinguished resource persons and cherished participants for making time for this important seminar. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the private sector's interest and support for the AfTA has been phenomenal. This is based on the premise that production and distribution of goods and services are largely undertaken by the private sector. In this view, a private sector which is made up of diverse actors, including but not limited to producers, transporters, traders, and retailers, is an indispensable partner to the success of AfTA. As a chamber, we are excited that the journey to opening up new market access opportunity to drive the needed economic growth and transformation for the African continent has begun. The business community stands to benefit from the removal of tariffs of goods and services, as well as elimination of non-tariff barriers which hamper trade between our continent, countries. It is heartwarming to know that two members of GNCCI, Kasapre Company Limited and Gandor Cosmetic Limited, are the first two in Ghana to export under AfTA. It is worth noting that member companies are also in the various stages of preparing to export under AfTA, and we would do everything to encourage them and support them to do well in that direction. Ladies and gentlemen, whilst lauding the commencement of this agreement, we need to collectively rethink the approaches that have been used in strengthening the business landscape in the country for Ghanaian business to effectively compete in the after. The calls for continuous building of synergies among stakeholders in tracking, monitoring, and enhancing Ghana's performance in terms of industrial productive capacity, trade facilitation, trade-related infrastructure, access to finance, trade information, and trade policy. In particular, concerted efforts are required to build competitiveness and growth readiness at the industry and enterprise level of the Ghanaian economy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here to learn, share ideas and experiences to equip the business community with the requisite knowledge and insights to fully benefit from AFTA. Our today's seminar will have 4 main presentations. On 1, fitting the business strategy into the AFTA strategy, the AFTA protocols, market access to opportunity, and rules of origin. There will also be testimonial from industry practitioners on their encounter in trading across borders and how AFTA can play a critical role in boosting trade within the continent. I wish to emphasize the GNCCI commitment to growth and prosperity of the Ghanaian community. In this regard, the GNCCI has developed a robust analytical framework that mobilizes business diagnostics data on business performance metrics, risks and innovation metrics, industry profiles, the policy impact, critical in building the competitiveness of SME for enhanced participation in the AFTA. The Chamber is also engaging several stakeholders, both at local and international level, in developing constructive approach to dialogue and help sustain growth of business in Ghana. In conclusion, I want to assure you the Chamber's continuous improvement in the delivery and targeted business support services towards improving the private sector competitiveness. The GNCCI is a key strategic partner, given our long-standing tradition of promoting and protecting commercial and industrial interests of our great nation. I encourage non-members to register with the Chamber to start benefiting through the myriad of business opportunities and insight through the delivery of value-adding products. In particular, the GNCCI is setting up desks across our regional chambers to provide intelligence trade reports on AFTA. I look forward for a successful workshop and hope that the idea and experience will be beneficial to our respective business operation. I thank you all for your kind attention. May God bless Mother Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clement Osei Amwako, President, GNCCI. My name is Odilia Intiamo. I'm the head business programming for the multimedia group, and I happen to partner the event. I'd quickly go through the invited guests here who will be doing various forms of presentations, and then so that you can get to know them. So the opening remarks will be done by Benonita Bismarck. She's the CEO, Ghana Shippers Authority. Then Dr. John Esiedu would represent the Minister of Trade Designate, Alan Chamating. Then Bonaventure Ajavo, he's the Director, ECTIB. He will also be representing Minister Designate for the Foreign Affairs. Then also a presentation will be done by Mr. David Ofosudote. He's a partner at AB and David. Then another presentation will be done by Mr. Ernest Bediako Sampong. He's the CEO, Ernest Chemist. Maybe you could just give a wave. Great, thank you. Then also Mr. Anthony Nyame Burfi will be coming from the Ministry of Trade, and his presentation will be on the protocols. Mr. Gerald Nyako Mensa, he's also a consultant on exports. His presentation will be on market access and opportunities. Mr. Fetchin Akoto is GRA Customs Division rep, and he will be looking at the rules of origin. Mr. Kobi Ando, MD, Bank of Africa, one of our partners, will also do a brief presentation. We have here also Mr. Clement Osei Amoako, who's the president, and then also Dr. Mrs. Emilia Siakwa. She's the National Treasurer, GNCC. Well, so we move quickly to remarks coming from the Ghana Shippers Authority, who will be key partners in all of this.
A very good morning to all of us. President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, my brother, Mr. Clement Osei Amoako, distinguished invited guests and resource persons, friends of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome all of you to today's seminar, which is themed after adopting the right business strategies to fully benefit. We at the Ghana Shippers Authority saw it as a great opportunity to partner the GNCCI on this occasion. As you know, our mandate is to protect and promote the interests of shippers in Ghana. AFTA is a very important concept for us in Africa, and all of us have to fully benefit. But in order to benefit, we need to understand what it all entails. There are various things that some of our stakeholders have informed us that they are a bit confused about. So I'm happy that the opportunity has been provided for us to understand it and then propagate the information. It's all about education and sensitization. So at the end of it, we will go across the nation to ensure that our various stakeholders fully understand and take advantage of this all-important concept. On this note, I'd like to once again welcome all of us here and to say that I wish us very, very fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benonita Bismarck. We're moving on to some remarks coming from Dr. John Asiedu, who is a rep from the Ministry of Trade, a key partner also.
The President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Clement Osei Amoako, CEO of the Ghana Shippers Authority, the Director representing the Honorable Minister Designate for Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, CEOs of private sector organizations, friends of the media, ladies and gentlemen, not forgetting our able resource persons. I bring you fraternal greetings from the Minister Designate for the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Honorable Kojo Alan Chermanton, who would have wished to be with us this morning, but rather unfortunately an event took him away and he has directed me to stand in for him. He sends you his warmest greetings and wish you a fruitful deliberation. So I stand here to read his short remarks. Today marks another milestone in the quest to sensitize the Ghanaian business community about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which follows a similar sensitization that took place in all the 16 regions of Ghana in the year 2020. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement ushers in a new dawn to Africa's economic transformation, and Ghana's economy stands to benefit with the creation of this single market with a population of 1.2 billion and a combined GDP of about $3.2 billion. This agreement, when fully implemented, will facilitate increased business opportunities in Ghana in terms of our limited market and economies of scale, which will result in reduced cost of doing business and improved efficiency and profitability of our industries, SMEs, and exporters. I'm glad to state that the government has established key national institutional structures to oversee the implementation of this agreement, including the AFCATA Interministerial Facilitation Committee, the National Steering Committee, and technical working groups on all the 7 clusters for boosting intra-African trade to help Ghanaian businesses to fully participate in this agreement. Additionally, an after-national action plan and the National Export Development Strategy have been developed as a framework for revitalizing our export development efforts with a strong focus on the African continental market. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for Ghana to benefit from the single market, there was the urgent need to create awareness among the regulatory authorities, including customs, economic operators, producers, and exporters, as well as the logistical sector. These are the agents that will make this agreement work on the ground. If there is no awareness, we cannot harvest the benefits. In addition, we need to develop concrete ways to enable the regulatory authorities and economic operators to interface with the systems that are being established under this agreement and to agree on the rules of origin, the customs facilities, and procedures for export and import for goods. I'm fully convinced that the coming into being of the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is one of the most important decisions taken by the African Union. For us, we recognize that an increase in trade is the surest way to deepen regional integration in Africa. It is worth mentioning that Ghana's currently exports to Africa is about $1.4 billion. And although our exports to the continent has been growing at an annual rate of 10.2% since 2015, Ghana's share of intra-African trade, imports and exports within Africa is only just around 4%. This warrants the need to critically assess the market potential for uptake of specific products on the continent. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I would like to urge the resource persons and participants to assist us in maintaining a disciplined focus on this agenda, to ensure that at the end of this seminar, we will all have practical appreciation of Ghana's strategies and action plans to boost our position in intra-African trade, especially the position of our business community in the continental market. Let me assure participants that the government is resolved and unwavering committed to the operationalization of the AFTA Secretariat in Ghana and to accelerate industrial transformation for inclusive economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana's overriding objective is to position itself as the new manufacturing and services hub on the African continent. We have all witnessed how our successful efforts and programs to pursue industrialization enable the private sector marshal production capacity and resources to mitigate the potentially devastating effects of COVID-19 pandemic. This is therefore the most opportune time for governments to empower the private sector as the continent recalibrates our trading systems to reposition their enterprises to optimize the benefits of the Continental Agreement. Finally, the government seeks the cooperation of the private sector to work together as stakeholders and as strategic partners to unpack and address the complexities of regional integration, whilst ensuring that the implementation of this agreement leaves no one behind. I would like to wish all a fruitful and productive seminar. today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Asiedu. And I picked two things from what you just delivered. The fact that we should be working together as agencies across the board to make sure that the value chain, there are no impediments in the value chain for exporters, and the need for government to empower the private sector to make sure that we really take advantage of the AFTA. Thank you very much. Just in case you tuned in, we're on a sensitization seminar on the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the theme is AFTA, adopting the right business strategies to fully benefit. If you just tuned in, we're having a wonderful time having different key partners who will give you a good education on the AFTA and what you should do as an exporter. We are going straight to Mr. Bonaventure Ajavo, who is the Director Active from the Foreign Affairs Ministry.
Thank you. The President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a good friend, the CEO of Ghana Shippers Authority, chief executives of companies and other institutions, heads of government agencies and the private sector, resource persons, invited guests, distinguished participants, the media, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you fraternal greetings from the Honorable Minister Designate, Honorable Shirley Ayoko Botche, who has expressed her desire to be here with you, but due to equally important assignment, has designated me to present her statement. It is a singular honor and privilege to be invited as a special guest to this very important sensitization seminar for the private sector on the start of the AFTA in Ghana, under the theme, adopting the right business strategies to fully benefit. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the organizers, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and other stakeholders such as Ghana Revenue Authority, for collaborating with the Ministry of Trade and Industry on their respective roles played leading to the start of AFTA trading, which commenced on the 1st of January 2021. Today marks the dawn of a promising future for Africa, as we witness the realization of one key objectives of the African Union Agenda 2063, which underscores AFTA as one of the African Union's flagship projects to significantly accelerate growth of the intra-African trade and use trade more effectively as an instrument of growth and sustainable development. Particularly, the target of increasing intra-African trade by combating the persistent obstacles to trade decisively. AFTA provides an exceptional opportunity for Africa to harmonize its continental trade environment and boost intra-African trade. However, it must be designed such that it is a win-win for all Africans' diverse range of countries, and especially for vulnerable groups. Seizing this opportunity will require careful approaches to a range of substantive topics within the AFTA. It will also require the effective implementation of the Boosting Intra-African Trade Action Plan, which provides the framework for the flanking policies that are key to AFTA success. The agreement covers trade in goods and services, including the following protocols: trade in goods, trade in services, intellectual property rights, competition policy, investment, and dispute settlement. The different protocols are negotiated in two phases. Phase 1 focuses on the 3 protocols, trade in goods with its 9 annexes, trade in services with its 3 annexes, and dispute settlement. Phase 2 negotiation will focus on the protocols on competition, intellectual property rights, and investment. The AFTA agreement aims to progressively reduce and eventually eliminate custom duties and non-tariff barriers on goods and allow free provision of services in priority sectors. Concerning trade in goods, the goal is to set for 90% of products at zero duty across the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are motivated by the commitment made by the African Union Head of States and Government through decisions taken during January 2012 meeting to fast-track the establishment of continental free trade area. The creation of a single continental market for goods and services with free movement of people and investment will help bring closer the Continental Customs Union and African Common Market as envisaged in phases 4 and 3 of the Abuja Treaty, and turn the second African economies into a more coherent, larger market. The larger, more viable economic space will allow African markets to function better and promote competition, as well as resolve the challenges of multiple and overlapping membership of regional economic communities, thereby helping to boost the inter-regional community trade. Moreover, the sheer size of the single market will provide a more conducive environment for industrial diversification and regional complementarities than what is viable under existing individual country approaches to development. The AFTA represents one of the largest economic zones globally, with an estimated population of 1.3 billion people with aggregate GDP of about $4 trillion in investment and consumer spending. The journey so far has been like a pilgrim progress, with many challenges and obstacles on our way, making us sometimes question our resolve, commitment, and strength in our quest to make intra-African happen. However, the fact remains that in the midst of all these arduous routes, our relentless efforts, especially in the face of COVID-19 pandemic, the African spirit could not be broken. Undoubtedly, the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our economies and social lives have been unprecedented. With large-scale disruptions to our supply chain, it is therefore imperative to devise an effective response that include trade financing and other liquidity support measures to reduce financial stress on the African economy. At the same time, income support measures are also required for the poor and vulnerable sections of our society. All these measures and more assistance to the already existing fragile economies of Africa can only be attained under the effective implementation of AFTA Protocol. I wish to commend Professor Bernard Orama, President of the African Exim Bank, Afro-Exim Bank, which is situated in Egypt, for instance, $1 billion AFTA adjustment facility to enable countries adjust in an orderly manner to sudden significant tariff revenue losses as a result of implementation of the agreement. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for Africa to unite and forge stronger partnerships to create a framework required to build an industrial Africa with a stronger and resilient economy, which can be bequeathed to succeeding generations. This pandemic has taught us to redefine our goals and look within us for strength, innovation, and creativity. African governments are therefore encouraged to create the optimal legal framework within which trading can thrive, even as the private sector, which is the engine of growth, spearhead the trading process. It is in this regard I commend the Chambers of Commerce for sensitizing the private sector to understand the rudiments of this agreement and take a full benefit of it. Under the leadership of His Excellency the President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, Ghana is poised to play a pivotal role in leading the economic emancipation of Africa, which is in tandem with our national development agenda, dubbed Ghana Beyond Aid, a development agenda parallel to the tenets of AFTA, which focuses on massive industrialization and establishment of manufacturing sector to add value to our abundant raw materials for export, with the aim of also providing jobs for the vibrant African women, traders, and the youth. It is refreshing to know that as of July 2019, 54 states have signed the agreement, and equally, by the end of the year, about 34 countries have deposited their instrument of ratification. According to Article 23 of the agreement, entry into force occurs 30 days after 22nd instrument of ratification deposited with the chairperson of the African Union Commission, the designated depository for this purpose. This feat is an unprecedented victory, and in that regard, we cannot rest on our oars, but persevere in our resolve, not only to end or alleviate poverty, but create wealth and raise the standard of living of our people. AFTA agreement has the potential to become a game changer and bring some great opportunities for entrepreneurs, just as you, the private sector, improving intra-African trade landscape and export structure, creating a sound global economic impact, developing better policy frameworks, fostering specialization and boosting industrialization, strengthening regional interstate cooperation, increasing employment and investment opportunities, as well as technological development, providing opportunity to harness African population dividend. As indicated by the World Bank, that if after it's successfully implemented, about 68 million Africans will be lifted out of poverty. By liberalizing trade, AfTA will help countries grow economies and create jobs. The African Development Bank has forecast the elimination of bilateral tariffs on goods and services, which will increase intra-African trade by 15%. Yet significant barriers remain beyond tariffs. The territorial borders continue to hinder the free movement of people in certain countries in Africa due to security concerns, health epidemics, and socioeconomic disparities, among others. Thus, immediate policy dialogue will increase movement of people, goods, and services across the borders, inevitably incentivize better infrastructure linkages and connections of African countries. Various studies have shown that the free movement of Africans throughout the continent, if implemented incrementally alongside appropriate systems, can increase trade, tourism, and industrialization. I wish to reaffirm the support of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Integration through our missions abroad and Ghana's foreign policy of economic diplomacy to effectively market and promote made-in-Ghana products for export and to vigorously attract foreign direct investment to increase our industrial capacity with the view of harnessing the advantages of AfTA. In that regard, the ministry is ready to pursue bilateral relations with countries or markets our private sector has identified to export under the AfTA for the removal of non-tariff barriers and other technical barriers to trade. On this note, I would like to take this opportunity to wish all of you a fruitful deliberation and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And you sure know that I will put it in 2 sentences and say that the need for us to include vulnerable groups and to make sure that we leave no one behind was one of the highlights, and the fact that AfTA will indeed become the game changer in relation to this pandemic. Thank you very much, Bonaventure Ajavo, Director, ECTIP. Thank you. The next that we will take a look at is a presentation on fitting the business strategy into the AfTA strategy by Mr. David Ofosu-Dorotey. Now, I'll give you a reason why you should listen to Mr. Dorotey if you're at home, and if you're here, you should pay rapt attention. So David Ofosu-Dorotey is the founder and senior partner of AB & David, a Pan-African business law firm with offices in 5 countries and a network of firms in a total of 24 African countries. His experience cut across over 2 decades of advisory role in the project finance, the power sector, public policy reform, and public-private partnership PPPs, and numerous infrastructure transactions. In addition to law, David also holds a master's degree in public administration and in applied business research, and is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, UK. He has served on the governing council of the Association of Ghana Industries. Between 2013 and 2014, David had the distinction to serve as a committee member of the National Competitiveness Council of Nigeria as a non-Nigerian member. He's also an executive of the Afro Champions organization, which has spearheaded the several Pan-African private sector initiatives, including the private sector $1 trillion African investment framework for Africa, now adopted by the African Union. David is also a co-author of recently published AfTA Year Zero report on country commitment and readiness of the AfTA. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's give him a round of applause as he does his presentation.
Okay. Good morning. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the introduction. I was wondering whether the mask was going to interfere with it, but it looks like it's okay.
So, Mr. Chairman and President of GNCCI, distinguished members of the high table, and distinguished participants both virtually and in the room, I'm grateful for the invitation and the opportunity to share a few words. I'm supposed to speak for the next 25 minutes or so on fitting the business strategy into the after strategy. And I will try and make it a simple question and answer session, so to speak. To begin with, to be talking about fitting your business strategy into the after strategy assumes first and foremost that after has a strategy. And second, that you have a strategy as a businessman in this room or listening as a member of the GNCCI. So having assumed that, it is also natural that your intention is to align your business strategy, if you do have one or in the course of developing one, to the strategy of after. Because the point is that if you don't have a strategy, then there is really no point. And as is often said, if you don't have a strategy, you will be sucked into somebody else's strategy. So I'm assuming that those who are interested in this topic either have a strategy or are developing one. So let me go to the first question I asked, the assumption that after has a strategy. And the answer to that is very simple. After itself is the strategy. So the question of whether after has a strategy, therefore, does not arise anymore. And what is the after strategy, or what makes after a strategy? After itself is part of a number of 14 big agenda that the AU has put in place. And in my view, perhaps the most important agenda since the OAU became the AU. And for those who are familiar, after is part of the bigger agenda of Agenda 2063. And it comes with other kinds of agendas, some of which I may mention in passing. But having said that, as businesses, we know that we don't plan for 2063. We plan for a shorter time frame. And therefore, the time frame I'll be using for my presentation will be looking at 2021 to 2030, which is looking at the next 10 years as the time frame. So, having established the fact that businesses have a shorter strategy, it is key that we also understand that no single event is adequate to impact on the strategy any business develops. Because often, what constitutes the factors that help us develop our strategy is a collection of a number of events, and not a single event. So let me first look at what are the key components of the after strategy. It includes the creation of a larger market, part of which has been highlighted by previous speakers, tariff-free, duty-free exports over a period, easier to do business across the continent, envisage value addition that will result as a result of these things, decrease restrictions on exports, free movement, which happens to be another separate agenda of the AU, and which will come with items like the single air transport market, and integrated business as well as flagship projects, some of which are under Agenda 2063. So these collectively coordinate from the AU perspective to create the bigger after agenda. So what, for example, are some of the signature projects which will come under Agenda 2063, which will impact on the after, which is often not talked about? I'll just mention a couple of them. One of them is proposed major trans-African transportation corridors, including proposed Cairo to Cape Town Highway and Djibouti to Dakar Railway. What does that really mean? It means it opens up the continent for people to move easily if these things get fully implemented. And for the avoidance of doubt, part of this network already exists. Second, a signature project that relates to power, with a view that the cost of power to industry may be brought down significantly. I'll not go into the details of that for now. And then, of course, transportation, I've talked about, in terms of the movement itself and the logistics. And lastly, removal of non-tariff barriers. But I did say earlier that no single strategy exists in isolation, and a number of things impact on it. So what I have just mentioned are the things that the AU has thought about. But as we all know, AU consists of key heads of states, public servants, international public servants. But one reason why, notwithstanding the fact that AU has done many things, after a loan has attracted so much interest, is because for the first time, this is something that involves the private sector. Because it is the private sector which trade, and not the heads of states who meet once or twice a year at the summit or the extraordinary summit. So much as they have created this opportunity, it moves to the private sector, and that is why no doubt the private sector has shown so much interest in it. So if you are talking about strategy, we need to look at it from that point of view, from a private sector strategy perspective, and not a public sector strategy perspective. So let me look at what other things that we may need to take into account when we are looking at strategy, because strategy cannot be focused on one item, even though that one item, such as AFTA, may be the main trigger for the development of other strategies. So if we take Ghana as an example, 1D1F, which has been a key policy of the government, has been ongoing for a while, and that impacts on your ability to add value, assuming you are taking advantage of 1D1F as an example. It also remains a fact that as you are developing your strategy, because AFTA is a larger market and brings Africa together, other companies of similar nature in other countries are developing their strategy, and other countries are developing their strategy. So you have to look at all the number of things that affect your strategy. Things like digitization and digitalization, sovereign debt restructuring, Africa-Europe relationship, including Brexit, for example, which has led to a situation where UK is beginning to sign individual agreements with countries. Ghana signed one on 31st December. Limited travel because of COVID and the COVID effect, digital currency, a number of these things all in one way or the other will impact the strategy you developed, and AFTA will not be in isolation. So now to the question, how does your business strategy fit into the strategy? It's important for me to emphasize that I recognize the fact that a large part of our businesses are informal. The figures keep varying. Some say 80%, some give less. But when it comes to strategy, it has to be formal. Strategy is never informal, and that's very important. So if you have an informal strategy which remains, as it were, in your head, and it's not put on paper and structured with the tactical approach to enable you to achieve the strategy, then this is not going to be very helpful, because you just carry it along. You just get carried along. So strategy has to be formal. Now, it need not be very big, but at least some amount of it needs to be formalized. And it is because the formalization helps you recognize the facts within which you are operating. So for example, everybody talks about intra-Africa trade reaching 16% or 18%. I believe the COVID has affected it and it may drop significantly in 2020, but as of 2019, it was supposed to be 18%. But the other factor, for example, that is mentioned often is the fact that we have a 3 trillion GDP. But very often we miss the fact that we actually have a 6.6 trillion purchase power parity. What does that mean to strategy? What it means to strategy that, notwithstanding the fact that Africa is not supposed to be very wealthy, the purchase power is actually higher than it is ordinarily assumed. And indeed, $6.6 trillion parity, purchase power parity, is higher than that of Russia, as an example, which is ranked among the G20. Now, again, if you look at other factors related, you will see that our exports outside Africa is 3% as part of world global trade. Then you come to Ghana and you go to the free zones as an example, and you realize that the average company is actually targeting to export outside Africa and not within Africa. So how does that mean if you are, for example, located in the free zone and where you are going to get your tariff-free, duty-free incentives is now within the Africa region based on the rules of origin and other things that we're going to talk about. But you will realize that the nature of shipping and the absence of liner vessels in Africa further affects you and makes you less competitive if you are located on the continent, because it is cheaper to ship to Europe than it is to ship to a neighboring African country, because the product has to go and come back. Okay, so all these are factors that one needs to look at. The second factor one needs to look at in fitting the strategy is what sector are you in? Because depending on the sector you are in, your strategy may or may not be affected greatly. Every sector will be affected, including services. But the sector you are in may determine the level of your impact. So whether you are in agri-sector, education, infrastructure, technology, retail, FMCG, etc., it's important to determine when you are trying to fit your strategy into it. The third factor is the rank of the ladder you occupy. And this is one of the things which is often overlooked. Because you can develop a very complex strategy if it doesn't fit the organization and the level that you occupy. So if your market share is not very big, and if you are an SME who is unable to meet even the local demand, then fitting into the abstract strategy may require that you consolidate with other people, not necessarily by merging, but looking at the possibility of aggregation as a means of being able to fit into the supply chain. And that is what I mean by the strategy. It will also mean that the quality and scale of your production, current production, needs to be looked at if you are into physical goods. There are many Ghanaian businesses which have good products but do not have the scale. But if, on the other hand, you actually do not intend to upscale, what is more important for strategy will be upgrading, which is often overlooked. Because we must remember that when it comes to AFTA, it doesn't just rely on the rules of origin, but it also relies on standards. And that means that there must be mutual recognition of the standards of your product by the country which is importing it. So your ability to upgrade to meet the standards as fixed by the Africa Standards Organization or recognized by the country to which your export is intended is very key. Because if you do not meet that, then somebody else is able to meet that requirement. And again, they can export into your country as well. The current visibility of your product is part of the things to be considered in terms of fitting into the strategy. Because if your product is not visible, then nobody can buy it. And therefore, strategies to make your product visible, and these days, online means like Instagram, etc., are all common means that people manage to reach other. And I've had occasion to give examples like Kente, which is very, very popular demand in many Southern African countries. As an example, it's already visible, and depending on the market that you are in. Now, the relevance of the product to existing or emerging markets is important, and your ability to penetrate. Having said that, there is one particular factor that I think is important, which is often overlooked, which is country strategy itself. Because where you are located and the ability of that country to develop the strategy that enables you to take advantage of AFTA is also important. Therefore, the ability of businesses and business associations like GNCCI and its other collaborators like AGI and the rest coming together to collectively influence government to ensure that the country strategy enables a trigger of the local strategy is quite important. Now, let's look at some of the areas which are trending and where your strategy may be looking at, and look at it from a very simple perspective. Feeding is one of them. Everybody eats. If you have a market where there are 1.27 billion people, you will be surprised to find that urban food imports alone is $35 billion per annum into Africa, growing to $110 billion by 2025, and expected to hit $150 billion by 2030. And that's clearly trending. Housing, because Africa is growing in cities. Clothing, because everybody must wear clothes, and now you can sell to 1.27 billion people. Creative industries, and going digital. And I'll give some figures as I go along. So in looking at your strategy, if you now come back to what I started with, which is the AFTS, AFTA itself as a strategy, let's look at just a few examples. One is a larger market that AFTA creates. A larger market means that there is larger demand. And demand is either tapped into or simply it swallows you if you are unable to respond to it. But there's a third part of demand which is often overlooked, which is that you can create non-existent demand. And in my view, this is one area that the likes of GNCCI should begin to focus on, how people respond to this new demand, find where the demand is, and help people to tap into it. I've been part of a study that is just concluded recently, looking at mapping all the products which are being exported across Africa, many products, and we were surprised to find out that a number of products which are in Ghana now, for example, are demanded in other countries, and people are just not tapping into it. I will not go into the details of that for now. Second, the fact that it is tariff-free, duty-free, over a period during which the tariff will be reduced for the 90% of goods which are in the basket of 5,000 will mean that as you are looking to export, others are also looking to export into your country. And that's a very important thing to look at. Now, since they are all duty-free, tariff-free, the cost of production in each person's country will determine who is more competitive. And the quality and visibility will determine that which is demanded, which then feeds into your strategy of how you need to respond. Value addition is another example, and I've talked about the fact that there's a need to upgrade for many. And for me, it creates huge opportunity for aggregators and consolidators in this country. And I'm talking about people who can simply bring various products together at one quality and meet the size of the demand which currently people are unable to meet. I've already talked about rules of origin and standards. Free movement as part of the strategy means that it's easier for people to come into your jurisdiction and for you to go into another person's jurisdiction. The export, those who did the first export, I think is Casapreco and a couple of other companies have indicated that it was much easier to do it using the AFTA format and the certificate of origin, which GNCCI is a key part working with GRA. I've seen GRA here, I know they are going to speak. So clearly, businesses' ability to work together will enable them to be able to export. But likewise, somebody is exporting into your country, and that's the point I wanted to emphasize. Now, I've already talked about some figures on feeding the people. Let me give a couple of other figures. Combined consumer spending is currently at $48 billion per annum in Africa. Pharmaceuticals imports is $14 billion. Apparel and footwear is growing and expected to hit $31 billion. Now, these may sound like big figures, but if you get $100,000 out of that $1 billion, it becomes very critical. But you cannot tap into it if you do not understand that the footwear or the clothes that you export must meet a certain standard as specified. And you don't need to go outside Africa, outside Ghana to look for the standards. Ghana Standards Organization has got standards for everything, including for appetition recently. Now, if we take clothing, clearly we now have 1.27 billion people to clothe, and it's expected to hit 1.6 billion people who will be looking for clothing and everywhere around Africa. Business-to-business spending is currently over $600 billion, and manufacturing, which is the basis of value addition, is expected to hit $1 trillion by 2025. So having said all this and giving all these examples and how it will fit in, let me touch on two key factors. One is your attitude. Because your attitude to strategy is very, very important. And there are 6 attitudes that I have identified, which people fall into. 15% of the people will fall into the attitude of I cannot be bothered. So this will just be news after Joy FM broadcasts it, and that's the end of it. Another 15% will fall into the category of seeing it as a threat, and therefore they may want the shops of other people to be closed, and they may be threatened by those who are moving into the country, whilst they will want to move into other people's country. 20% will fall into the category of it's just a policy change, and therefore business as usual. All that will change is the forms that I fill for customs export, and if I go to GRA and I can download it, that is fine. Another 20% will see it as a major advantage to take off, a major opportunity to take advantage of, and they will begin to put together the strategy either alone or collaborating with others. 15% will see that there are new markets that they have never got to know of and they need to exploit. And the last 15% will see it as an opportunity to completely transform their businesses. Does it look like theory? No. The study that I was part of recently, actually we were surprised to find that whereas almost 100% of all the businesses we interviewed in 8 African countries